Starting with our MLB panel, DraftKings contributor Matt Meiselman with RotoWire dynamic duo Erik Halterman and Paul Bruno. Gentlemen, it's MLB Price Check right now, so I need you to give us your favorite plays at the following price ranges for tonight's 7-game main slate. We will start with a pitcher north of 8K. Matty, what do you got?
So I'm going with Mike Minor here. I think that probably will be a fairly unpopular pick by most people, but Minor is a perfectly decent pitcher, and the Chicago White Sox are getting Eloy Jimenez back, but there's still a lot of strikeouts in this lineup. So I'm definitely scared of the top few guys the White Sox have with Tim Anderson and Eloy and Jose Abreu, some really, really good right-handed hitters. But the reason to like Minor for DFS is that after that, there's just a lot of really bad hitters at the back half of this lineup, and they are guys who strike out a lot too. So even though Yoan Moncada, for example, is a really good hitter, especially when he's batting from the right side of the plate, he strikes out a ton. His strikeout rate against lefties this year is over 30%. Then you have Billy Hamilton and Zach Collins, Adam Engel. These are not great baseball players. So I think Minor can rack up a lot of strikeouts against the back half of the lineup. And even if he gives up a couple runs to the good hitters here, he could still end up being one of the top, if not the top scoring pitchers on the slate.
Yeah, 8,300. What do you have, Paul?
I got Wade Miley of the Reds at 8,600. Emerson, last 10 appearances, the guy's 4-0, pitching to a 2.14 ERA. Opposing batters combined for batting average of 253, which is not too bad. Whip is a 125, which is decent. His strikeouts is where it starts to get interesting for me. 50 strikeouts in those last 10 appearances, covering 59 innings pitched. If he comes to near that rate over 6 innings tonight, that'll be part of a good game score, assuming he gets the win. He's facing a Cubs team that's near the bottom in most batting stats, and that will also help make his case for me tonight.
Okay, Erik, pitcher over 8K. Who's your dude?
I'll go with Shohei Ohtani, maybe a bit of a basic answer. The other guys gave you some interesting, cheaper options, but Ohtani near the top of that list of the most expensive guys, and deservedly so. He had excellent numbers early in the season despite a massive walk problem. He walked nearly 17% of batters in his first 7 starts, but over his last 7, he's cut that walk rate all the way down to 6.6%. while maintaining a strikeout rate just shy of 30%. In all but one of those 7 starts, he's allowed 2 or fewer earned runs. Still has a 3.68 ERA over that stretch because he had one 7-run, 2-out blow up against the Yankees. And that is something he does. If you're playing him in cash games, be warned that there's a chance that he just tanks your whole lineup. But the ceiling on him is as high as anybody. And he's facing a Rockies team that's quite possibly the worst lineup in the league whenever they're not at Coors Field. So I think he should be worth paying up for tonight.
All right, let's go to a pitcher under 8K. Paul, start us off.
Michael Pineda is the pick for me, pitching for the Twins tonight, the most productive and healthy pitcher in DK points per game among the contenders in this range tonight with 13.4 points per game on the year. Other than him, I think the pickings are slim. I'm curious to see if the other guys unearth some gems for you, but I'm going with Pineda. He's coming off a decent start tonight against the White Sox. His last time out, he only allowed 1 run, 5 innings pitched in that one against a high-octane offense. He's also racked up an impressive 41 strikeouts and only 13 walks in his last 48 innings. Again, I like that ratio of strikeouts to innings pitched for him. If he goes 6 innings, gets the win, that'll be a good game score for him.
Erik, pitcher under 8K.
Yeah, I'm definitely there on the lack of good options. I think probably what I'm doing tonight is not using a pitcher under 8K, but if I have to go to one, I think it's either Pineda or Dallas Keuchel at 7,500. I do not recommend Dallas Keuchel often. I like strikeouts in my fantasy pitchers, and he doesn't give you those, just a 14.6% strikeout rate on the season. And he's not the elite ground ball guy he used to be, but he still keeps the ball on the ground well, 55.3% on the season. ERA in the low 4s is maybe only a hair better than what he deserves. Most interesting about him today, though, is he's facing a Royals team that's 20th on the season by WRC Plus at a good enough pitcher's park. And I think with a White Sox offense being significantly better than that, that should help his chances for a win, given that I'm not as convinced about Mike Minor going against him as Matt was.
Yeah, and Pineda could be his last start in the Twins uniform, too. Let's keep that in mind. He's reportedly drawing a lot of trade interest out there. Matt, pitcher under 8K.
So I'm going with the same line of thinking, really. If I have to roster one that's under 8K, I think it's Pineda. He's really the cash game option here. The problem is that he should be very popular, and for GPPs, he's not good enough where it's worth playing him when he's chalk. I like Pineda when he's a contrarian play, but even against the Tigers, there's pretty significant downside for him. So yeah, I'd rather just pay up for pitching. And normally I'm saying that I want to play cheaper pitchers to get some expensive bats that may be contrarian because they're quote unquote overpriced. But this slate seems like kind of the opposite. If I have to play a pitcher in tournaments, though, who's under 8K, I think Darren McCaughan on the Mariners is my guy here. I don't think he's good at all. I think there's a chance he gets negative points. Like he's a pretty bad pitcher. The reason to play guys like this is that if you play a pitcher who costs less than 5K on a slate where no one's doing it, even if they score 11 fantasy points, which might even be a lot for him, you're then affording yourself bats that other people just don't have. So it's really about building a lineup that is more unique. That's the appeal of a guy like that. I think 20 fantasy points for him is totally out of the question. And honestly, if you play him and he gets 6 or 7, you might be pleased with that. But I think it's more you play a guy that cheap because it's a unique strategy for the slate. And then we'll get to the hitters that cost a lot here, but I think there will be some that are pretty contrarian.
Yeah, great segue. Let's go ahead and go there right now. Hitter over 5K. You're talking unique, Matt. Are you going to get super unique here?
Yeah, I actually think Bryce Harper will be really contrarian on this slate. I think the Phillies as a whole, because the Red Sox and Blue Jays exist here, those will be the teams that people pay up for when they pay up. There will be some popular hitters that are cheap, like on the White Sox. There are some guys who are cheap. Eloy is only 2,500. We'll get there in a minute, but Twins are cheap. Tigers are cheap. I think the Phillies just go totally overlooked. Joe Ross has been really good at times this year. I'm not really buying it, and he just hit the IL with an elbow injury. So his most recent start, he had 11 strikeouts, but he hasn't pitched now in about 3 weeks. And the Phillies just have a really good offense, and now they're priced up. They were popular for a while, but they're more expensive than they were over the last week or two. So you have Harper at 5,900, Real Muto 5,100. I think those two guys in particular could end up being really low owned for this slate. So that's where I'm looking.
Matty, I'm glad you brought up Bryce Harper because we got a Bryce Harper boost today on the DK Sportsbook as well. So it's an always sunny boost here. Bryce Harper to record 2+ hits and the Phillies to win, boosted from plus 405 to plus 425. Get on it, people. Erik, hook me up with your hitter over 5K.
Yeah, I know Matt said Bryce Harper might be unpopular. He's the top guy for me too, though. Although I do like some other options. Rafael Devers, 5,700, has 4 homers in the last 10 games, just shy of 10 fantasy points per game over that stretch. I think he's an excellent expensive option too. But Harper is just doing what he always does. He's not walking more than he's striking out like he did last year, but hitting 288, slugging 518, and that expected slugging of 555 said he could even be having a bit more power than he's shown so far. That's actually his second highest expected slugging of the StatCast era, down over 100 points from his ridiculous performance last season. But this is still the Bryce Harper that we've seen for quite a long time at this point in a hitter-friendly park in Philadelphia with the platoon advantage against Joe Ross, who has a 4.02 ERA that does look well supported, but that's also his first time with an ERA below 5 since 2016. Coming off that minor elbow issue, like Matt said, I think this is a good time to jump all over him.
Okay, Paul, bring us home on this one.
You know what? Call it a chalky pick if you like, but you got to get the big bats that have been producing in your lineup. And tonight, for me, that's Vlad Guerrero, priced at 6K here. He's at or near the top in most of the offensive categories that relate to power and consistency, and the velocity off his bat is consistently well over 100 miles per hour. So I'll take that. He's also playing that little bandbox known as Fenway Park against the pitcher, Nick Pivetta, who has had a lot of trouble relating to his tendencies to serve up a long ball of late. 12 homers in his last 55 innings pitched over his last 10 starts. That's not a good rate at all. If you want to go for a pick that might be considered a little bit less of an obvious one, I'd go with Jose Abreu. His power strokes in sync with 3 homers and 7 extra base hits in his last 10 games, priced at $5,200 tonight. He has 18 dingers on the year and mashes lefties regularly throughout his career. He's really going well of late and could be good value at $5,200.
Paul, hitter under 5K. Take us there.
Sticking with the Canadian theme, I'm going with Joey Votto at $4,100. He's been raking in his last 10 outings, guys, with 13 hits in his last 38 at-bats, including 3 homers and 5 extra base hits, an OBP of 457 in that stretch. He's also facing Kyle Hendricks tonight, who is struggling of late. And so I think that's a very favorable matchup for Votto, and look for him to take advantage this evening.
All right, Matty, Hinder under 5K.
So I'm sticking with the Phillies here. I think Segura, I think Andrew McCutchen, I think Didi Gregorius, all in the 4,000s will just go way overlooked for the reasons I mentioned with Harper, where it's just the Red Sox and the Blue Jays are the really appealing spot. And I think there is a drop off to the Phillies from those guys. Like Marcus Semien probably outscores them. Xander Bogaerts at shortstop is probably a better play than Didi in a vacuum, but just the ownership will be so much higher there. So the Phillies are just the stack that I think will be really contrarian. So for tournaments, I think those guys priced in the 4,000, 4,500 range are really good plays.
And then Eric, what do you got? Your dude swinging a bat under 5K.
Yeah, it's Kyle Tucker for me. I think Kyle Tucker is the guy I've probably mentioned most often in this category throughout the year. He's at 3,400, but man, on talent, I think he's a 5,400 kind of guy. I think he's a couple thousand cheaper than really he deserves to be. His surface stats are good enough, hitting 274 with 18 homers and 9 steals, but the expected stats are, I think, better than most people probably realize. A 312 expected batting average is tied for third with Freddie Freeman, right ahead of Vlad Jr. and Juan Soto, guys who I think are pretty well known to be good contact hitters there. And his expected slugging of 581 is 8th in the league, right behind Freddie Freeman, and right ahead of Rafael Devers, 2 spots actually ahead of Bryce Harper. So it's a guy swinging the bat like Soto and Harper, who's priced at 3,400. He's on a lineup as good as the Astros. He'll get the platoon advantage against Darren McCann. And I think Matt mentioned him earlier as a recommendation, but also said, I don't think he's very good. And I think that tells the story there. He's a non-prospect with 1 career major league appearance in which he didn't strike out anybody and walked 3 in 5 innings. ERA close to 4 with a strikeout rate under 19% at the AAA level. So again, one of the better bats in the league, priced like a nobody, hitting against a nobody. I think Tucker is probably the best play of the day.
Guys, let's get some quick answers from you on this last one because we're running tight on time. Over the weekend, the Padres reportedly pulled off the first big move of the MLB trade deadline here, acquiring all-star second baseman Adam Frazier from the Pirates, 29-year-old leading baseball in hits, was a Gold Glove finalist last season. So what's your reaction to the Padres going out and adding another all-star to their already potent lineup, Matt?
Honestly, I'm not that excited about this deal for the Padres. I think Jake Cronenworth is a better player, and he already plays second base for the Padres. I do think they could slide Cronenworth to first, and then Frazier plays second, and Erik Hosmer loses playing time, which would be an improvement. But it's not a huge improvement. Like Adam Frazier has been really good this year, but it's mostly being driven by his batting average on balls in play, which is substantially higher than what he does most years. He is striking out less. He's walking a little bit more. He's probably made a bit of an improvement, but the 130 WRC plus that he has to this point, like, I just don't think that's sustainable. He probably regresses to be an above average player, but this will likely be the only all-star game that this guy makes in his career. I think he's a good player, but he's not a massive difference maker. So I think it's a good move. I think that he helps the team, but it's not a move to get that excited about, in my opinion.
Hey, Paul, quickly, whose fantasy value does this impact the most, you think?
Well, I like his fit in this lineup, and I don't want to discount his defensive ability either. I'm a little higher on him. He's enjoying a career year, so I think he's going to help drive that offense. The bottom third of it maybe is where he fits in, and that is a boost to everybody. So I say, what's not to like? The guy's got a great on-base percentage. He's a solid fielder. I'm happy with the move, and I think it's an upgrade for the Padres overall.
Eric, because of this, I'm seeing some Erik Hosmer to the Yankees rumors out there.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I thought after this trade is it just shows what a good job AJ Preller and their team are doing. Adam Frazier was one of the more obvious second basemen on the market, but the Padres were not one of the teams most in obvious need of a second baseman because of Jake Cronenworth, as Matt mentioned. But they've just built such a flexible roster. Cronenworth can play half the positions on the diamond. Frazier can move to the outfield corners. So I think what the Padres are going to do is just they have the flexibility and freedom to take whatever makes sense. If there is an offer for one of their guys, I would not be surprised at all if they move an established major league player just because they brought in another one on a deal that they liked. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're not done at all, but it's going to be hard to predict exactly what is coming next.